My name is Elizabeth Cole. I'm 30 years old, and this is the story of how my family forgot I existed until they needed money. And how I finally vanished on my own terms. I live in Austin, Texas. For years, I convinced myself that maybe the distance between me and my family was normal. That maybe, as we all got older, people just got busy. That love didn't always look like phone calls, visits, or thank you texts after I paid their bills. But deep down, I knew better. I was the dependable one, the quiet one with a decent job, no drama, and a soft spot for making things easier for everyone else. A spot so soft, it got trampled on for years. This year, I turned 30. And for some strange reason, that number hit different. It wasn't about balloons or cake. It was about being seen. Remembered. Acknowledged. So I decided, just once, to throw myself a small birthday party. Nothing big. Just a cozy corner at a local bar I loved on the south side of the city. Warm string lights. A few photos from when we were kids. A red velvet cake, my favorite. I sent the invites to my mom, my stepdad Frank, my younger sister Madison, and my brother Tyler. The day came. I got there early. Set everything up. The bartender gave me a free plum wine on the house. Maybe they're just running late, he said kindly when he saw me checking my phone for the 5th time. I smiled, trying to hide how hollow that smile felt. By 8 p.m., not a single message. No on my way. No, sorry, running late. Just silence. At 9 p.m., I lit the candle on my cake myself. Took a bite so the bartender wouldn't feel too sorry for me. I posted a fake happy photo on Instagram and wrote grateful for another year beneath it. I couldn't bring myself to write anything more honest. I left by 10 p.m., tipped well, and drove home to an apartment that had never felt so suffocatingly quiet. But that wasn't even the worst part. A week later, while I was elbows deep in deadlines at work, I got a group message from my mother. Hey family. We're planning Frank's 55th at Pacific Shores Resort, $1,800 per person. Please send by Friday. Love you all. No apology. No, sorry we missed your birthday. Just a financial demand dressed up as a family event. Madison replied right away. Just sent it, Mom. So excited. Then Tyler chimed in. All paid. Can't wait. I sat there, frozen. Not angry. Not even sad. Just done. I opened my banking app, transferred exactly $1, and typed in the memo, Happy birthday. Then I blocked every single one of them. No explanation. No dramatic exit message. Just block. 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 I wasn't interested in fighting. I wanted out. I changed every password tied to our old joint accounts. Called a locksmith and changed every lock in my home. Not because I was scared, but because I knew my mother. Silence, to her, was a declaration of war. And she never walked away from a war. 2 days later, a notification popped up from my bank. Suspicious login attempt detected. My heart thudded in my chest. The joint account. The same one I used years ago to cover Tyler's college tuition. The one I'd used to help pay for Madison's wedding when she couldn't afford a venue. The one I used to help Mom renovate the bathroom for Frank's bad back. I called the bank. Freeze the account. Move everything into my personal account. Lock it all down. Now. That evening, the texts began. Strange numbers. Different area codes. What the hell are you doing? Why'd you change the locks? You froze the account? Call me back. I turned my phone off. For the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom. But I had no idea what was coming next. Friday night. Doorbell rings. Loud. Urgent. I glance at my security cam, 2 cops. Are you Elizabeth Cole? The taller one asks. I am. We received a report that you may be missing. Your family's concerned you might be mentally unstable. Possibly at risk of self-harm. I blink. The absurdity almost makes me laugh. I'm fine, I say calmly. I just cut off contact with some people who tried to drain my bank account. I've been working all week. Would you like proof? I show them my remote work app, live meeting feed, calendar, messages. 10 coworkers can confirm I've been in meetings all day. They hesitate, clearly uncomfortable. Your family said they hadn't heard from you. They were worried. Worried, I repeat, bitterly. They called the police because they couldn't get money out of me. Not because they care. One of them clears his throat. We don't intervene in family matters, but if you feel harassed, you might want to consider a restraining order. I nod. If they contact me again, I will. They leave. I stand there, stunned. I've never felt so alien to my own blood. But that was just the beginning. 2 days later, another pounding knock. Not cops this time. I check the cam. It's my mom. Frank. And Madison. The entire damn circus. They're angry. Furious. And they're not leaving without a show. And trust me, they're about to get one. I didn't open the door, not right away. I stood just out of view from the peephole, my hand hovering near the speaker button. The pounding didn't stop, and it wasn't a casual knock anymore. It was that loud, entitled kind of knock. The kind that says, you owe us something. I pressed the intercom. What do you want, Mom? Open the door, Elizabeth, she snapped, her voice already rising. We need to talk. Enough of this nonsense. I exhaled slowly. Talk about what? About how you ignored my birthday? Or how you tried to access my account without permission? Frank jumped in, his voice strained with anger and that unmistakable paternal condescension. You're acting like a child, Elizabeth. We're worried about you. This isn't you. I laughed, not from amusement, but disbelief. You called the police. You said I was missing. Unstable. That's concern? Madison's voice pierced through next. You're being dramatic. You blocked everyone over a party, now you're cutting us off like you're some victim. I didn't open the door. I opened the speaker again. I blocked you because I'm done being used. I sent thousands for your wedding, Madison. Remember that? No thank you. No acknowledgement. But suddenly I'm selfish? Frank scoffed. We raised you. Fed you. Put a roof over your head. I cut him off. I started working at 16. I paid my own college tuition with scholarships and 2 jobs. You didn't raise me. You tolerated me. There was a pause. A long one. Then Mom's voice came through again, syrupy with drama. You're really going to throw your family away over a misunderstanding? I opened the door. Just wide enough for them to see me. But not wide enough to let them in. What do you want from me? I said coldly. Money? Apologies? A second chance to pretend we're close? Madison glared. You owe us more than this. I owe you nothing, I said. Nothing but the truth. I only ever mattered to this family when I was handing over my wallet. Frank stepped forward, but I stood firm, blocking the doorway. Mom's voice cracked. We're family. We love you. I stayed up nights worrying about you. Not once did you ask how I was doing. You only ever asked what I could do for you. Frank's face flushed. So what, you just disappear? You want us to fall apart? I held his gaze. I'm not responsible for holding this family together. Not anymore. Mom's voice dropped, almost a whisper, but sharp like a blade. Fine. You want out, you're out. But don't come crawling back. I'd rather sleep in peace than crawl back into a cage, I said. Now leave. I shut the door slowly, deliberately. No slamming. No yelling. Just finality. Outside, I heard footsteps. A muffled curse. A car door slamming. Then nothing. But that silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. The next day, I got an email from the bank. Someone had filed a refinancing request for the house in Lake Travis, the one under both my mother's and my name. I froze. 6 years ago, my mother called sobbing about how they'd lose the house without a cosigner. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Back then, I still believed that love meant saying yes. Now, they were trying to refinance without telling me. I called my attorney, Gretchen Lewis, sharp as ever. Block the refinance. Now. She didn't waste time. Send me the deed, the mortgage agreement. We'll shut this down. But I wasn't stopping there. I opened my laptop and started a new email to my accountant. Subject, request for financial audit. Body, please compile every expense I've covered for my family over the last 6 years. I've attached a breakdown. And I had receipts. I had bank statements. I had email confirmations. $62,000, house down payment. $18,500, Frank's pickup truck. $27,000, Madison's gambling debts. $39,800, Tyler's tuition. $55,200, Mom's medical bills. $12,000, random borrowed money never returned. Total, $214,500. I wanted documentation. Not emotion. I didn't want to argue, I wanted proof. 3 days later, my accountant sent me a full spreadsheet. Every dollar. Every date. Every transfer. I reopened the group chat. Temporarily. Sent the file. Along with one line. I want it all back. The fallout was immediate. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. Are you insane? Madison. I'm working 2 jobs. What do you want me to do, sell blood? Tyler. You're tearing this family apart. Frank. Your mother hasn't slept in days. Mom. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I forwarded the documents to Gretchen. I want to withdraw my ownership from the house, I told her. If they can't buy me out, force a sale. She hesitated. Elizabeth, this will tear them apart. They may never forgive you. I stared at the screen. They already did worse. This is just the consequence. That day, Gretchen's office sent a formal notice. Elizabeth Cole is withdrawing capital from jointly owned property at 1175 Shoreline Drive. If no response is received in 14 days, forced sale procedures will begin. Madison texted me, furious. You really want to see Mom homeless? You're not just cold. You're evil. I didn't reply. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, but this time, it wasn't hollow silence. It was clarity. And that's when the most surprising thing of all happened. The house went up for sale. The house listed quickly. It had to. Gretchen made sure of that. She used a contact who specialized in fast sales, properties that needed to move, not impress. The description online was dry and to the point, 3-bedroom, 2-bath with lake access. Recently appraised. Price to sell. No mention of the birthday parties we used to fake smile through on that back porch. No sign of the string lights I once hung for Mom's anniversary celebration. Just a property with equity and debt waiting to be split. And then came the next step. One I didn't ask for, but one that changed everything. They started liquidating. First, Frank's Explorer. Sold for $15,000. Then Mom's car, her precious white sedan she loved to call Lady Pearl, posted on Facebook Marketplace with the caption, "Family downsizing." The jewelry came next. The sapphire earrings I bought Mom for my first promotion. The gold chain she said was priceless. They all showed up in photos sent to Gretchen as proof of good faith payments. Proof they were trying. $10,000 hit my account a few days later. A week after that, another 5. Still short. I said nothing. But Gretchen didn't sit still. She issued a final notice. If the full remaining balance wasn't paid within 72 hours, we would proceed with legal action to recover it. The next morning, $7,200 landed in my account. Not a penny more than what was required. No note. No apology. Just a transaction. I stared at the numbers. 10 years of being drained, reduced to a 3-line deposit record. But I didn't feel sad. I felt released. The next update from Gretchen was even more final. They vacated the house. They couldn't afford rent. Mom's credit was too low. Frank, apparently, had lost his job months ago but kept it a secret. Madison and Tyler? Both moved in with their partners. Neither took Mom or Frank in. Gretchen said there were whispers. They were staying in the old RV Frank used to tinker with behind the garage. The same one he swore he'd convert into a travel van for retirement. Now it was their home. That evening, a text came from Madison. "You happy now? Mom's sleeping in a freezing van. You call that justice?" I stared at it for a long time. Not because I doubted myself. But because the guilt game was still playing, like a bad movie I no longer wanted to watch. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked down to the lake by my apartment. The air was cold and sharp, but the quiet felt right. I walked past joggers, dog walkers, and couples holding hands. None of them knew who I was. None of them needed anything from me. It felt like exhaling for the first time in a decade. 4 months passed. Silence. No calls. No demands. No updates. At first, the quiet was deafening. I found myself checking my phone out of habit, waiting for the guilt to come creeping back. But it didn't. And then, something different. A coworker invited me to go bowling. It was a Friday evening. Normally I'd say no. Noise, small talk, pretending. But something inside me said yes. Maybe I needed to test if I'd really broken free. The bowling alley was lit in neon blue. The music loud but not overwhelming. I chose a lane at the far end. My coworker joked about how bad she was. I smiled. I wasn't great either, but I didn't care. The crash of pins was oddly soothing. And then I saw him. 2 lanes over. Bent over a ball. Shoulders slumped. Hair gray. Missed the pins completely. Frank. My stepfather. He didn't see me at first. But then he looked up. And froze. I stood still. Part of me wanted to leave. But the other part, the stronger part, stood its ground. He walked over slowly. Shoes squeaking across the glossy wood. "Elizabeth," he said, voice soft, almost unsure. "Didn't expect to see you here." I nodded. Said nothing. He glanced at the lane beside me. "Mind if I play one round?" I shrugged. "Go ahead." He sat beside me. Bowled another ball. Gutter again. Then he turned. "I didn't come here to ask for anything," he said. "Not this time." I raised an eyebrow. "I was jealous," he said suddenly. "Of you. You became everything I wasn't." I thought being the man of the house meant control. But you just quietly kept rising. And instead of celebrating that, I took from it. From you. I looked at him. Really looked. The lines on his face seemed deeper. The pride he always wore like armor, it was gone. I didn't mean to ruin everything, he said. But I did. Silence sat between us. Not hostile. Not forgiving. Just honest. You didn't ruin everything, I said eventually. But you made me think I owed you my life. And that ruined me. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry. It was the first time he'd said those words and meant them. But I wasn't there for reconciliation. I'm not coming back, I said. I don't want to rebuild. I don't want to fix it. I just want to live. He reached out a hand. It shook slightly. I stared at it, then placed mine in his. The handshake wasn't warm. But it was equal. And that was enough. I'm leaving, I said, grabbing my coat. Enjoy your game. He didn't try to stop me. Outside, the cold air hit my face. But I didn't shiver. I drove home. No texts. No guilt. No fake emergencies waiting for me on my voicemail. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, it didn't scare me. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm. No calendar reminders. No passive-aggressive texts pretending to be check-ins. Just sunlight spilling through the blinds, soft and clean. I made coffee, sat on my small balcony, and watched a couple of blue jays flit around the trees. It was peaceful. It felt like someone had removed a weight from my chest that I didn't even know I'd been carrying. I wasn't waiting for the next demand. I wasn't wondering if a call would come asking for a small loan, or if someone was going to guilt me for not showing up to a family event I was never really wanted at in the first place. For once, I belonged only to myself. I kept thinking about what Frank said at the bowling alley. About being jealous. About realizing too late what he'd done. And maybe, just maybe, there was a piece of him that meant it. But I also knew it didn't change anything. A real apology doesn't rewrite history. It just acknowledges the damage done. And I was done with damage control. That day, I booked a one-way ticket to Oregon. Not to escape, but to begin. I'd always wanted to see the coast there. Rugged, wild, quiet. A place where no one knew my name, where I could walk barefoot on cold sand and not feel like I was being followed by memories. I packed light. Left behind the old photos. The birthday cards I never received. The hand-me-down guilt. I walked through my apartment one last time, touching the walls, the countertop, the coffee mug that had become my favorite. I wasn't saying goodbye. Just thank you. This was the space where I learned how to breathe again. As I stepped outside with my luggage, I noticed something unusual. A small envelope tucked into my doorframe. No name. No stamp. Just taped there quietly. I opened it. Inside, a short letter in handwriting I recognized instantly, my mother's. Elizabeth. You got what you wanted. We sold the house. We gave you the money. I hope you're happy. Because we're broken now. Frank's lost everything. I have nothing. Your siblings won't even speak to each other. You did this. I don't know if you can live with that, but I wouldn't be able to. Mom. I stood there on the sidewalk for a long time. Staring at that last line. I wouldn't be able to. The old me would have cried. Would have felt shame crawl back into my skin like a disease. Would have second-guessed everything. But the new me? I folded the letter neatly. Slipped it into my jacket pocket. Then walked to my car. Because I could live with it. What I couldn't live with was being the invisible glue that held together people who never once held me. The flight to Oregon was quiet. I sat by the window. Watched the land fall away beneath the plane. Every mile felt like shedding another layer of someone else's expectations. I closed my eyes and leaned into the hum of freedom. Once I landed, I took a cab straight to the coastal town I'd researched for months. A tiny place called Yachits. One main street. A bookstore. A coffee shop. An inn with a porch that overlooked the ocean. That's where I stayed. The first night, I walked along the cliffs, the Pacific crashing against the rocks below like the earth itself was exhaling. I sat on a bench and let the wind tangle my hair. I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll through fake lives or filtered photos. I just existed. And for the first time, I felt what I imagine true peace is supposed to feel like: nothing screaming inside you, no ghosts knocking from behind, just silence and breath. 2 days in, I got a message from Gretchen. Short. Professional. Final. Transfer confirmed. Property fully dissolved. Legal ties severed. All accounts settled. Congratulations. I stared at it for a while. Then deleted it. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need reminders. This wasn't a victory lap. It was closure. At a small thrift shop off Main Street, I found a wooden plaque. It was old and scratched, but the message carved into it made me stop breathing for a second. Freedom isn't walking away from someone. It's returning to yourself. I bought it without hesitation. That night, I pinned it above the small writing desk in my room. I made a cup of tea and sat beside the window, watching the waves roll in slow and steady. I didn't think about the past. I didn't replay the confrontations. I didn't calculate the debt I'd carried for years. I didn't scroll through memories wondering if I had been too cold. Because I hadn't been cold. I'd been clear. And there's a difference. The next morning, I walked into the little bookstore near the end of the street. The owner, a kind older woman named Ruth, greeted me like we'd known each other for years. You visiting? Sort of, I said. Maybe longer. She smiled. People come here for quiet. They stay for clarity. I bought 3 books I hadn't read in years. Ones I loved as a kid, back when I still believed in happy endings. Outside, I sat on the porch swing with my tea and one of the books open on my lap. The wind danced around me like a secret. I wasn't someone's daughter anymore. Someone's savior. Someone's fallback plan. I was Elizabeth. Just Elizabeth. And that was enough. The weeks passed gently, like waves lapping at the edge of the shore. Time no longer felt like a series of obligations. I began to measure it by sunrises over the ocean, the smell of fresh coffee from Ruth's store, and the way my shoulders slowly relaxed a little more each day. I started writing again. Not for work. Not for anyone else. Just for me. Journaling, short stories, thoughts I hadn't let myself feel for years. Sometimes I wrote about the past, not to relive it, but to release it. I filled pages with sentences that had once been stuck in my throat. Words I hadn't been allowed to say out loud in a family that believed silence was loyalty and endurance was love. One morning, I was walking along the coastal path when a man in his 60s stopped me. Excuse me, he said, smiling gently, are you staying at the inn with the blue shutters? I am, I replied, unsure. You dropped this, he said, holding out a small notepad. My heart skipped. It was mine. I'd written part of a letter to myself in it just the day before. You're allowed to let go, even if no one understands why. I thanked him quietly and tucked it into my coat. He nodded and moved on. And something about that small interaction stayed with me all day. Not because of the notepad, but because someone had noticed something I lost and wanted to return it. It was such a foreign gesture. Simple. Kind. Without strings. Back in Austin, that kind of consideration had always come with expectations. Later that afternoon, Ruth invited me to a local community event, a small reading at the bookstore followed by cider and conversation. Normally I'd shy away from group settings. But this time, I said yes. That night, surrounded by strangers who asked nothing of me except to listen or share a story, I realized something profound. Maybe family isn't always the people who raise you. Maybe it's the people who see you. Really see you. Even if just for a moment. A few days later, I received an email from Madison. Subject, you win. The body was short. Hope you're proud. Mom hasn't spoken in days. Frank's sick. Tyler's failing his classes. You took everything from us. Don't ever contact us again. I didn't. I archived it without reading it again. I didn't need to prove I was strong anymore by not reacting. Because now, I understood. Silence wasn't absence. It was power. That email didn't trigger guilt. It confirmed the cycle was still turning, just without me. And I wasn't stepping back in. That weekend, Ruth asked me to help her sort through donations for the bookstore. As I folded paperbacks and stacked used journals, she looked over her glasses at me and said, "You seem lighter than when you first walked through that door." "I am," I said truthfully. I let go of something I'd been carrying for too long. She didn't ask what. She just nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. By month 3 in Yachits, I'd found a rhythm, mornings riding by the sea, afternoons volunteering with Ruth, evenings cooking simple meals and reading under soft lamplight. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't loud. But it was mine. And then, a letter arrived. This one, handwritten. Stamped. Sent from an address I hadn't seen in years. It was from my Aunt Clara, my father's sister, who had distanced herself from our side of the family long ago. The same aunt who once warned me, "Your mother confuses dependence with devotion. Be careful not to become her crutch." Inside, her letter read. Elizabeth. I heard what happened through the grapevine. I want you to know I'm proud of you. It takes more courage to walk away than to keep bleeding for people who never notice the wound. I've been there. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No judgment. No expectations. Just love. Clara. I cried. Not the silent, suffocating sobs I used to stifle into my pillow, but open, cleansing tears. Like something old and rusted had finally broken loose inside me. I wasn't alone. I'd just been surrounded by the wrong people for far too long. That night, I wrote back. Told her everything. Not out of need, but out of choice. Because maybe healing didn't mean closing every door. Maybe it meant finally choosing which ones were safe to open. The next day, I sent Ruth a short story I'd written, a fictional version of my journey, about a girl who disappeared from a life of obligation and found herself in a town no one could find on a map. She read it, wiped a tear from her cheek, and said softly, "You should share this. Others need to hear it." Maybe one day, I smiled. For now, it's enough that I wrote it. I walked home under the stars that night, the salty wind threading through my scarf, and thought about how far I'd come, not in miles, but in truth. And I realized something. I used to believe peace was the opposite of conflict. But now I knew the truth. Peace is the absence of manipulation. And I would never trade it again, not for apologies, not for approval, not for blood. 3 months later, the world moved on, but I didn't return to the one I came from. By now, I'd rented a small cabin on the edge of the cliffs. Just big enough for a bed, a desk, and shelves lined with second-hand books. It had a screen door that creaked when the wind blew, and floorboards that moaned under your step. It wasn't polished. It wasn't sleek. But it was honest. Much like the person I was becoming. I had a new rhythm. Wake up with the light. Coffee by the sea. Write until the words stopped flowing. Sometimes I sent short essays to local papers under a pseudonym. Other times, I kept the words for myself, tucking them away like old photographs in a drawer no one else needed to see. But peace doesn't go unnoticed forever. One cold morning in late April, a letter came addressed to Elizabeth Cole, handwritten in a careful, slanted script. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You may think you've won. But families don't just disappear. You'll need us one day. And we won't be there. M. No signature, but I didn't need one. It was Madison, of course. Always needing the last word. For a split second, that old fear stirred. That reflex that used to make me reach for the phone, for a fix, for forgiveness. But I set the letter down and made tea. You see, the thing about peace is this: once you've tasted it, chaos can't seduce you the same way anymore. You learn how to protect it. How to keep it from slipping through your fingers like it always used to. The next week, I sat on the porch and watched two teenage girls walk by, giggling, wrapped in oversized flannel jackets. One dropped her book. I called out gently and handed it back. She thanked me, then asked, "Are you a writer?" I smiled. Sort of. She looked curious. "What do you write about?" I paused. Then said, "Freedom." She tilted her head. "Like, running away?" "No," I said. "Like, returning to yourself." She nodded like she didn't quite understand, but one day, she would. That afternoon, I got a call from Gretchen. Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp as ever. "I've received a petition from your family's attorney." I stiffened. "A petition?" "Yes," she said. "They're requesting mediation. Apparently your mother wants to re-establish civil channels of communication and settle long-standing emotional grievances." I didn't answer right away. Gretchen sighed. "Elizabeth, I know how hard you've worked for this silence. I won't take any steps without your permission. But I also won't lie: if you ignore this, they'll spin it. They'll call it cruelty. They'll call it abandonment." I chuckled, bitterly. "They already did." "Then what would you like to do?" she asked. I looked out at the cliffs. The waves crashing below. The horizon stretched wide and unbothered. "I want to live in truth," I said. "If they want closure, they can find it on their own. They created the silence. I just stopped filling it." "I'll reject the petition on your behalf," she said. "Thank you." I hung up. And didn't look back. Later that evening, I lit a fire in the little pit out back. I took that letter from Madison. And the one from Mom. Folded them neatly. One by one, I dropped them into the flames. Watched the edges curl, the ink dissolve, the lies turn to ash. Some people hold on to pain like proof. Like if they forget it, it means it didn't happen. But I didn't need reminders. My freedom wasn't built on spite. It was built on release. The following week, Ruth asked if I'd be willing to read one of my pieces at a local storytelling event. It would be small, just a dozen or so people in the back room of the library. At first, I hesitated. But then I remembered the girl who sat alone at her own birthday party, slicing cake with a fake smile and waiting for people who never came. I owed her this. I stood at the little podium with trembling hands and read the story of a woman who gave too much, and then, stopped. Who chose herself for once, and found peace in the wreckage. When I finished, the room was silent. Then came the applause. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't dramatic. But it was enough. Afterward, a woman approached me, mid-40s, red scarf, kind eyes. She took my hand and said softly, "I thought I was the only one." And in that moment, I knew I'd done more than survive. I'd become a lighthouse. Quiet, steady, and impossible to ignore when the storms rolled in. The next morning, I wrote something new. Not about the past. Not about the pain. But about hope. Hope that maybe someone else would hear this one day and understand that walking away doesn't make you cold. It makes you brave. It means you finally chose yourself in a world that taught you not to. It means you let the silence speak, and what it said was, enough. The final piece of the past fell away quietly. No headlines. No courtroom battle. No dramatic showdown. Just silence that stayed, unbroken. I never replied to Madison's letter. I never returned Gretchen's call after she confirmed the family's mediation request had been formally rejected. And I didn't respond when Tyler messaged me from an unknown number 2 weeks later, simply saying, "Just so you know, Mom's in the hospital. Chest pains. Frank's working again. Madison moved to Denver. I figured you'd want to know." I didn't. Not because I lacked compassion. Not because I was cruel. But because there was a time I would have dropped everything, spent thousands, drained myself, and still been accused of being cold. And I'm not that woman anymore. I stood by my window that day, looking out at the cliffs as the waves crashed below in rhythmic defiance of everything that once kept me tied to people who never saw me as anything but a resource. I didn't cry. I didn't pray for their comfort or curse their names. I just whispered a quiet goodbye. To the version of me who used to answer every call. Who would have driven through a storm for someone who wouldn't walk a block for her. A week later, a letter arrived from Aunt Clara. She wrote in her familiar looping script. "I'm proud of you, Elizabeth. I know that sounds small, but I mean it with every ounce of my heart. Your mother, she wasn't always like this. But survival makes people strange. It hardens them. You weren't wrong to walk away. You were brave to stop the cycle." There was a check enclosed for $1,000. A small note scribbled next to it. "Use it to start something. Not to fix something." I never cashed it. Not because I didn't appreciate it. But because I didn't need it. Her belief in me was worth far more than the money. That summer, I started hosting writing workshops at the library. Small ones, nothing fancy. Just people who had stories but never space. One woman shared a letter she never sent to her late sister. A teenager read a poem about a father who never noticed her. A quiet man in his 70s talked about the daughter he hadn't spoken to in years. And I listened. Because I knew what it meant to carry love like a burden. To feel guilty for wanting peace. To confuse loyalty with loss. One evening, after a session, Ruth handed me a manila envelope. "This came for you," she said, eyes soft. No return address again. I opened it at home. Inside was a photograph. Me at 6 years old, grinning in a Halloween costume. A note was scribbled on the back in my mother's handwriting. "You were always strong. I just didn't know how to let go of needing you." No name. No apology. No plea. Just a sentence. For a long time, I sat in my chair, holding that photo like a memory too fragile to put down. Maybe it was her version of closure. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was just an echo from someone who once believed love meant possession. Whatever it was, I folded it, gently, and slid it into the back of my journal. Not to keep. Not to revisit. But because I had finally reached a place where I could see it and not shatter. And that was the difference. I walked to the edge of the cliffs that night. The stars were out, endless and indifferent. The wind rushed around me, wild and unashamed. I whispered a single sentence into the sky. "I forgive you, but I'm still not coming back." Forgiveness, I'd learned, didn't mean returning. It meant releasing. It meant loosening the grip of what was so you could hold on to what is. And what is peace. A few months later, I legally changed my address. Set up a small writing studio behind the cabin. Got my business license for freelance editing. Built something that was mine. No one ever knocked on my door again. No one asked for money, for favors, for one more chance. And that silence? It never felt lonely. It felt earned. Because you don't need applause to validate your freedom. You don't need recognition for healing. You just need to believe that the version of yourself you're building deserves to be safe, seen, and sacred. That fall, I hung a new sign above my desk. A simple carving I made myself from driftwood and ink. You are not selfish for saving yourself. Every day, I saw it. Every day, I lived it. And every night, I slept with a quiet heart. No longer someone's fallback plan. No longer someone's silent savior. Just Elizabeth. Finally, fully, irrevocably free. In a world where family pressure can be disguised as duty and manipulation wears the mask of love, Elizabeth's story reminds us that walking away is not an act of cruelty, it's the beginning of self-respect. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they share your blood. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is disappear from the chaos and return to yourself. What did you think of Elizabeth's choice? Was she too harsh, or just finally free? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if her story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge.